Question 1. The analysis reveals that a significant number of users are attempting to access corporate email and calendar data via their personal mobile devices, raising concerns about data security and compliance. As the IBM Notes Traveler Administrator, you need to establish a policy to manage this mobile access effectively. Which of the following approaches best aligns with securing corporate data while enabling necessary mobile access? Option A. Implement a policy that requires users to enroll their devices with IBM Notes Traveler and enforces specific security settings, such as a strong passcode requirement and the ability to perform a remote wipe of corporate data. Option B. Restrict IBM Notes Traveler access exclusively to company-issued mobile devices, prohibiting any access from personal devices. Option C. Allow all devices to connect to IBM Notes Traveler without any specific security configurations or enrollment requirements, relying solely on user discretion. Option D. Focus solely on educating users about the risks of mobile access and trusting them to implement their own security measures on their personal devices. The correct answer is A. Implement a policy that requires users to enroll their devices with IBM Notes Traveler and enforces specific security settings, such as a strong passcode requirement and the ability to perform a remote wipe of corporate data. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in IBM Notes Traveler administration, ensuring secure and compliant mobile device access while balancing user productivity and data protection. The administrator must navigate the complexities of device management, data synchronization, and the potential for data leakage, all within the framework of IBM's recommended practices and potentially relevant data privacy regulations. Though for this exam, we focus solely on the provided IBM framework and best practices. The challenge lies in implementing a solution that is both effective and adheres to the principles of least privilege and data security, without unduly hindering legitimate business operations. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach, which involves implementing a policy that requires users to enroll their devices and enforces specific security settings like strong passcodes and remote wipe capabilities, represents best professional practice. This aligns directly with IBM Notes Traveler's design principles for secure mobile access. By mandating enrollment, the administrator gains visibility and control over the devices accessing corporate data. Enforcing security settings like passcodes mitigates the risk of unauthorized access if a device is lost or stolen. The remote wipe capability is a critical data protection measure, allowing for the immediate deletion of corporate data from a compromised device. This approach prioritizes data security and compliance with IBM's recommended security posture for mobile devices. Incorrect approaches analysis. Allowing all devices to connect without any security enforcement is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. It directly violates the principle of data protection and exposes sensitive corporate information to unacceptable risks. This approach would likely contravene any internal security policies and could lead to data breaches, reputational damage, and potential legal ramifications if sensitive data is compromised. Implementing a policy that only allows access from company-issued devices, while seemingly secure, can be overly restrictive and may not be practical for all business needs. This approach fails to acknowledge the reality of BYOD, bring your own device trends, and can hinder user productivity and satisfaction without a clear, documented business justification for such a strict limitation. It also misses the opportunity to secure personal devices that may be used for business purposes, potentially leading to shadow IT. Focusing solely on user education without implementing technical controls is insufficient. While user awareness is important, it cannot be the sole reliance for security. Technical controls are essential to enforce security policies and provide a baseline level of protection against device loss, theft, or malware. Relying only on education leaves the organization vulnerable to human error and malicious intent. Professional reasoning. Professionals in IBM Notes Traveler administration must adopt a risk-based approach to mobile device security. This involves understanding the potential threats and vulnerabilities associated with mobile access and implementing controls that effectively mitigate those risks. The decision-making process should prioritize 1. Understanding the organization's data sensitivity and compliance requirements. 2. Leveraging the security features provided by IBM Notes Traveler. 3. Balancing security with user productivity and business needs. 4. Implementing a layered security approach that includes technical controls, policy enforcement, and user education. 5. Regularly reviewing and updating security policies and configurations to adapt to evolving threats and technologies. Question 2. Research into the secure and compliant deployment of IBM Notes Traveler to a mixed environment of corporate-owned and personally owned devices, BYOD, has highlighted several potential implementation strategies. The primary objective is to ensure corporate data remains protected while enabling user productivity, which approach best balances security, compliance, and user experience for a large enterprise. Option A. Restrict IBM Notes Traveler access exclusively to corporate-issued devices, prohibiting any BYOD access, and implement stringent network-level controls that limit functionality for any device not explicitly sanctioned by IT. Option B. Implement a mandatory, fully managed security profile on all devices accessing corporate data via Notes Traveler, requiring users to accept all security policies and configurations without prior individual consent, and deploy to all users simultaneously to expedite access. Option C. Deploy IBM Notes Traveler with minimal security configurations, relying on user discretion for data protection, and provide a general overview of security best practices without specific policy enforcement or device-level controls. Option D. Conduct a phased rollout of IBM Notes Traveler, starting with a pilot group of users who receive comprehensive training on security policies and device management. This is followed by a broader deployment with clear, enforced security policies, user consent mechanisms for data protection, and ongoing support. The correct answer is B. Implement a mandatory, fully managed security profile on all devices accessing corporate data via Notes Traveler, requiring users to accept all security policies and configurations without prior individual consent, and deploy to all users simultaneously to expedite access. Explanation. This scenario presents a common implementation challenge in enterprise mobility management, specifically concerning the secure deployment of IBM Notes Traveler to a diverse user base with varying device ownership models. The professional challenge lies in balancing the need for robust security and data protection with user productivity and the practicalities of device management. A key consideration is ensuring compliance with data privacy regulations and internal security policies, which are paramount in protecting sensitive corporate information accessed via mobile devices. The correct approach prioritizes a phased rollout with comprehensive user training and clear policy enforcement. This represents best professional practice because it minimizes disruption, allows for early identification and resolution of technical issues, and ensures users understand their responsibilities regarding data security on their devices. By providing clear guidelines and support, it fosters a culture of security awareness, which is crucial for mitigating risks associated with mobile device usage. This approach aligns with the principle of least privilege and defense in depth, ensuring that data is protected without unduly hindering legitimate business operations. An incorrect approach that bypasses user consent and mandatory security configurations for a rapid, unmanaged deployment poses significant regulatory and ethical failures. It violates principles of data privacy by potentially accessing or storing corporate data on devices without explicit user acknowledgement of security protocols and data handling. This could lead to breaches of confidentiality and unauthorized access, contravening data protection laws and internal compliance mandates. Furthermore, failing to provide adequate training or clear policies creates an environment where users may inadvertently compromise security, leading to potential disciplinary action and reputational damage for the organization. Another incorrect approach that focuses solely on technical deployment without addressing user education or policy enforcement is also professionally unacceptable. While technically sound, it neglects the human element, which is often the weakest link in security. This can result in misconfigurations, insecure usage patterns, and a lack of accountability, all of which increase the organization's vulnerability. Ethically, it fails to equip users with the knowledge and tools necessary to protect themselves and the organization's data. A professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a thorough risk assessment, considering both technical vulnerabilities and user behavior. It requires a balanced approach that integrates security controls with user experience and compliance requirements. Stakeholder engagement, including IT security, legal, and business units, is essential to define acceptable risk levels and develop comprehensive deployment strategies. A phased approach, coupled with continuous monitoring and user feedback, allows for adaptive security measures and ensures that the implementation remains effective and compliant over time. Question 3. Risk assessment procedures indicate that the IBM Notes Traveler environment may be vulnerable to unauthorized data access due to outdated security configurations and insufficient data encryption policies. Which of the following administrative actions best addresses these identified risks in compliance with data protection regulations? Option A. Rely on existing network firewalls to protect the IBM Notes Traveler server, assuming that internal network traffic is inherently secure. Option B. Increase the frequency of user training on basic email etiquette and phishing awareness, without making any technical changes to the Traveler server. Option C. Implement a comprehensive security audit of the IBM Notes Traveler server and client configurations, enforce strong password policies, enable SSL/TLS for all data transmission, and review and update data encryption settings for data at rest. Option D. Immediately disable all remote access to IBM Notes Traveler to prevent any potential data leakage until a full system overhaul can be completed. The correct answer is C. Implement a comprehensive security audit of the IBM Notes Traveler server and client configurations, enforce strong password policies, enable SSL/TLS for all data transmission, and review and update data encryption settings for data at rest. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in IT administration where a critical system like IBM Notes Traveler, which handles sensitive corporate data and communication, must remain compliant with evolving data protection regulations. The challenge lies in balancing the need for operational efficiency and user access with the imperative to secure data against unauthorized access and ensure its integrity, all while adhering to specific regulatory frameworks relevant to the exam's jurisdiction. The administrator must proactively identify and mitigate risks associated with data handling and access controls within the Notes Traveler environment. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves implementing a robust, multi-layered security strategy that aligns with regulatory requirements for data protection and privacy. This includes regularly reviewing and updating access control policies, ensuring data encryption both in transit and at rest, and establishing clear procedures for data retention and deletion. Specifically, for IBM Notes Traveler, this would translate to configuring appropriate security settings within the Traveler server and client applications, such as enforcing strong password policies, enabling SSL/TLS for secure communication, and potentially implementing mobile device management (MDM) solutions to enforce security on connected devices. This approach directly addresses the regulatory mandate to protect sensitive information and maintain its confidentiality, integrity, and availability, thereby minimizing the risk of data breaches and non-compliance. Incorrect approaches analysis. Focusing solely on user convenience without adequate security measures represents a significant regulatory failure. For instance, allowing unrestricted access to sensitive data or neglecting to enforce encryption would violate data protection principles and expose the organization to legal penalties and reputational damage. Similarly, implementing security measures in isolation without considering their impact on user workflow, or without a clear understanding of the specific regulatory obligations, can lead to ineffective controls or unnecessary user friction, potentially leading to workarounds that compromise security. A reactive approach, addressing security issues only after an incident occurs, is also a critical failure, as regulations typically mandate proactive risk management and preventative measures. This demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a failure to uphold the organization's responsibility to protect data. Professional reasoning. Professionals must adopt a risk-based approach to security and compliance. This involves understanding the specific regulatory landscape applicable to their organization and the data they handle. The decision-making process should prioritize identifying potential threats and vulnerabilities within the IBM Notes Traveler environment, assessing their impact, and implementing controls that are both effective and proportionate to the risks. Regular audits, policy reviews, and continuous monitoring are essential to ensure ongoing compliance and adapt to new threats and regulatory changes. Collaboration with legal and compliance teams is crucial to ensure that technical solutions meet all legal and ethical obligations. Question 4. During the evaluation of IBM Notes Traveler Administration for a US-based organization handling sensitive customer data, the administrator discovers that the system's default configuration does not explicitly enforce data retention policies or maintain detailed audit logs of user access to mobile devices. The administrator needs to ensure compliance with applicable U.S. federal data protection regulations. Which of the following approaches best addresses this regulatory compliance requirement? Option A. Configure IBM Notes Traveler to enable comprehensive audit logging for all user access and data synchronization events, and implement data retention policies that align with relevant U.S. federal regulations, ensuring these configurations are regularly reviewed and tested. Option B. Prioritize user convenience by disabling any advanced security or logging features that might impact device performance or synchronization speed, as long as the data is encrypted in transit. Option C. Manually export and archive all data from IBM Notes Traveler on a quarterly basis, and conduct periodic, informal reviews of user access logs to ensure data is not being misused. Option D. Rely on the organization's existing network-level security measures and endpoint protection software to safeguard the sensitive data, assuming these are sufficient to meet regulatory obligations. The correct answer is A. Configure IBM Notes Traveler to enable comprehensive audit logging for all user access and data synchronization events, and implement data retention policies that align with relevant U.S. federal regulations, ensuring these configurations are regularly reviewed and tested. Explanation. The scenario presents a common challenge in IT administration, balancing operational efficiency with regulatory compliance, specifically concerning data privacy and security, as mandated by relevant U.S. federal regulations applicable to data handled by IBM Notes Traveler. The core of the challenge lies in ensuring that data access and retention policies, while designed for usability and performance, do not inadvertently violate these regulations. A key aspect of compliance is the ability to audit and demonstrate adherence to data handling requirements, which necessitates proper configuration and understanding of the system's capabilities. The correct approach focuses on leveraging IBM Notes Traveler's built-in audit logging and data retention features in conjunction with a clear understanding of the applicable U.S. regulatory framework. This proactive and documented approach ensures that data is handled according to legal requirements, that access is traceable, and that data is retained or purged appropriately. This aligns with the principles of data governance and security mandated by regulations such as HIPAA, if health information is involved, or SOX, if financial data is involved, which require organizations to maintain secure and auditable records. Best professional practice dictates a thorough understanding of the system's compliance features and their configuration to meet these external obligations. An incorrect approach that prioritizes only user convenience without considering audit trails or retention policies fails to meet regulatory requirements for data accountability and security. This could lead to violations if data is accessed inappropriately or retained beyond legal limits, making it impossible to demonstrate compliance during an audit. Another incorrect approach that relies solely on external security measures without configuring the system's internal compliance features leaves gaps in data governance. This is problematic because it assumes that perimeter security is sufficient, neglecting the need for granular control and visibility over data within the IBM Notes Traveler environment itself, which is often a specific requirement of data protection regulations. A third incorrect approach that involves manual, ad hoc data management is highly susceptible to human error and inconsistency, making it impossible to reliably demonstrate compliance and increasing the risk of data breaches or improper data handling. Professionals should approach such situations by first identifying all applicable U.S. federal regulations governing the type of data being handled. Then they must thoroughly understand the capabilities of IBM Notes Traveler related to audit logging, data retention, and access control. The next step is to configure these features in alignment with the regulatory requirements and organizational policies. Finally, regular review and testing of these configurations are essential to ensure ongoing compliance and to adapt to any changes in regulations or system functionality. Question 5. Operational review demonstrates that IBM Notes Traveler is configured to synchronize all mail, calendar, and contact data to a wide range of mobile devices, with minimal enforcement of device-level encryption or remote wipe policies. Which of the following administrative approaches best aligns with regulatory compliance and data protection best practices for IBM Notes Traveler Administration? Option A. Disable remote wipe functionality to prevent accidental data loss for users and rely on user education for device security. Option B. Synchronize all data types to all devices without any additional security configurations, prioritizing user access and convenience. Option C. Limit synchronization to only mail data and disable calendar and contact synchronization to reduce the attack surface. Option D. Implement granular synchronization policies that allow users to select specific data types for offline access and enforce mandatory device encryption and remote wipe capabilities for all connected devices. The correct answer is D. Implement granular synchronization policies that allow users to select specific data types for offline access and enforce mandatory device encryption and remote wipe capabilities for all connected devices. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in IT administration, where the need for efficient data access and user convenience must be balanced against stringent regulatory compliance requirements, specifically concerning data privacy and security. The professional challenge lies in interpreting and applying the relevant IBM Notes Traveler Administration Guidelines and any overarching regulatory frameworks that might govern data handling, even if not explicitly detailed in the exam syllabus itself. As the exam focuses on the administration of the system within a compliance context, the administrator must make a judgment call on the acceptable level of risk associated with a particular configuration. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a thorough understanding of the IBM Notes Traveler Administration documentation and its implications for data security and privacy. This includes identifying configurations that minimize the exposure of sensitive data while still allowing for functional mobile access. Specifically, understanding and implementing policies that control data synchronization, device encryption, and remote wipe capabilities directly addresses the core principles of data protection and regulatory adherence. This approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes the safeguarding of sensitive information, a fundamental ethical and often legal obligation for administrators. It demonstrates a proactive stance in mitigating potential data breaches and ensuring the organization remains compliant with its own internal policies and any applicable external regulations that mandate data security. Incorrect approach is analysis, an approach that prioritizes user convenience over security by enabling broad data synchronization without adequate controls, such as device-level encryption or robust authentication, is professionally unacceptable. This failure directly contravenes the principles of data protection and could lead to regulatory violations if sensitive data is compromised. It demonstrates a lack of due diligence in assessing and mitigating risks. Another incorrect approach would be to disable critical security features, like remote wipe, to simplify device management or address user complaints about data loss. This action creates a significant security vulnerability, as lost or stolen devices would retain access to potentially sensitive corporate data, posing a direct risk of unauthorized access and a clear violation of data security best practices. Finally, an approach that relies solely on user self-management of security settings without administrative oversight or enforcement mechanisms is also professionally deficient. This abdicates the administrator's responsibility to ensure a secure environment and leaves the organization exposed to risks stemming from user error or negligence. It fails to establish a robust security posture and is not aligned with the principles of responsible IT governance. Professional reasoning. Professionals in this role must adopt a risk-based approach. This involves understanding the data being managed, the potential threats, and the regulatory landscape. Decision-making should be guided by a framework that prioritizes security and compliance, even when it introduces minor inconveniences. This framework includes 1. Understanding the data. Classify the sensitivity of data accessed by Notes Traveler. 2. Assessing risks. Identify potential threats to this data on mobile devices. 3. Consulting documentation. Refer to IBM Notes Traveler Administration Guides for security best practices and configuration options. 4. Implementing controls. Configure security settings, encryption, remote wipe, synchronization policies to mitigate identified risks. 5. Regular review. Periodically audit configurations and logs to ensure ongoing compliance and security. 6. User education. Inform users about security policies and their responsibilities. Question 6. Cost-benefit analysis shows that implementing advanced data loss prevention (DLP) features within IBM Notes Traveler for all mobile devices is technically feasible and would significantly reduce the risk of sensitive data exfiltration. However, this implementation would require substantial upfront investment in licensing and ongoing administrative overhead, potentially impacting user experience due to increased scrutiny of data movement. Considering the organization operates under a specific set of U.S. federal data privacy regulations, which approach best balances compliance, cost, and operational impact. Option A. Deploy the most comprehensive DLP solution available across all IBM Notes Traveler devices immediately to ensure maximum protection against all potential data loss scenarios, irrespective of the data's sensitivity or the cost implications. Option B. Focus solely on user training and policy enforcement for data handling, without implementing any technical DLP controls, as the cost of advanced DLP solutions is prohibitive. Option C. Implement a tiered DLP strategy, applying the most stringent controls to devices accessing highly sensitive data categories, while using less restrictive but still compliant measures for devices handling less critical information, supported by comprehensive user training on data handling policies. Option D. Defer the implementation of advanced DLP features until a significant data breach occurs, relying solely on existing basic security measures and user awareness programs to mitigate risks. The correct answer is C. Implement a tiered DLP strategy, applying the most stringent controls to devices accessing highly sensitive data categories, while using less restrictive but still compliant measures for devices handling less critical information, supported by comprehensive user training on data handling policies. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in IT administration, balancing operational efficiency with regulatory compliance. The administrator must ensure that IBM Notes Traveler, a critical mobile messaging and collaboration tool, adheres to data privacy and security regulations. The challenge lies in implementing necessary security measures without unduly hindering user productivity or incurring excessive costs, all while remaining compliant with the specific regulatory framework governing the organization's operations. The chosen approach must demonstrate a thorough understanding of the applicable regulations, the technical capabilities of IBM Notes Traveler, and the business impact of different security postures. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a proactive and risk-based strategy for regulatory compliance. By conducting a thorough assessment of data sensitivity and potential threats, the administrator can tailor security policies to meet specific regulatory requirements, e.g., data encryption, access controls, audit logging, without over-engineering solutions. This aligns with the principles of data protection by design and by default, which are often mandated by regulatory frameworks. It ensures that compliance is integrated into the system's operation from the outset, minimizing the risk of breaches and subsequent regulatory penalties. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on implementing the most stringent security measures available, regardless of actual risk or business need, fails to demonstrate cost-effectiveness and can lead to user dissatisfaction and operational inefficiencies. This might violate principles of proportionality and necessity, often found in data protection laws, which require that data processing be adequate, relevant, and not excessive. Another incorrect approach that neglects to document the rationale behind security decisions or fails to regularly review and update policies risks noncompliance. Regulatory frameworks typically require demonstrable accountability and ongoing adherence to security standards. Ignoring the need for regular audits and updates can lead to outdated security practices that no longer meet current regulatory demands or threat landscapes. Professionals should approach such situations by first identifying the specific regulatory obligations applicable to their organization and the data handled by IBM Notes Traveler. This involves consulting legal counsel and compliance officers. Next, they should perform a risk assessment to understand the potential threats and vulnerabilities associated with the system and its data. Based on this assessment and regulatory requirements, They should design and implement security controls that are proportionate to the risks and compliant with the law. Finally, establishing a process for ongoing monitoring, auditing, and policy review is crucial to maintain compliance over time. Question 7. Regulatory review indicates that IBM Notes Traveler is being considered for deployment to enable mobile access to corporate email and calendaring. As the administrator responsible for ensuring compliance and security, what is the most critical initial step to mitigate potential risks associated with this new mobile access solution? Option A. Focus solely on the technical configuration and functionality of IBM Notes Traveler to ensure seamless user experience. Option B. Implement IBM Notes Traveler immediately to leverage its features, and then investigate security best practices. Option C. Conduct a comprehensive risk assessment specifically for the integration of IBM Notes Traveler, identifying potential data security and privacy vulnerabilities, and developing mitigation strategies. Option D. Proceed with the deployment of IBM Notes Traveler and address any security concerns that arise post-implementation. The correct answer is C. Conduct a comprehensive risk assessment specifically for the integration of IBM Notes Traveler, identifying potential data security and privacy vulnerabilities, and developing mitigation strategies. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in IT administration where a new technology, IBM Notes Traveler, is being introduced. Core challenge lies in ensuring that the implementation aligns with existing organizational policies and regulatory requirements, particularly concerning data security and privacy. The administrator must proactively identify potential risks associated with mobile device access to sensitive corporate data and establish appropriate controls before widespread adoption. Failure to do so could lead to data breaches, noncompliance with data protection laws, and reputational damage. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a comprehensive risk assessment that specifically targets the integration of IBM Notes Traveler. This means identifying potential vulnerabilities such as unauthorized access to corporate data from lost or stolen devices, data leakage through insecure applications on mobile devices, and compliance gaps with data retention or privacy policies. The assessment should then lead to the development and implementation of mitigation strategies, such as strong authentication, device encryption, remote wipe capabilities, and clear user policies. This proactive, risk-based methodology is best professional practice because it directly addresses potential threats and ensures that security and compliance are built into the system from the outset, aligning with the principles of data protection and responsible IT governance. Incorrect approach is analysis. Implementing IBM Notes Traveler without a dedicated risk assessment is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. It demonstrates a disregard for due diligence and a reactive approach to security, which is unacceptable. This could lead to violations of data protection regulations by exposing sensitive information without adequate safeguards. Deploying IBM Notes Traveler and then addressing security concerns as they arise is also professionally unacceptable. This reactive stance increases the likelihood of security incidents and data breaches, potentially resulting in legal penalties and loss of trust. It fails to meet the ethical obligation to protect corporate and user data proactively. Focusing solely on the technical functionality of IBM Notes Traveler without considering its security and compliance implications is a critical oversight. This approach ignores the broader responsibilities of an administrator, which includes safeguarding data and adhering to regulatory frameworks. Such a narrow focus can lead to unintended data exposure and noncompliance. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a structured, risk-based approach to technology implementation. This involves 1. Understanding the business objectives and the technology's role. 2. Identifying all relevant regulatory and policy requirements. 3. Conducting a thorough risk assessment to pinpoint potential threats and vulnerabilities. 4. Developing and implementing appropriate mitigation strategies and controls. 5. Establishing ongoing monitoring and review processes. This systematic process ensures that technology adoption is secure, compliant, and aligned with organizational goals, fostering responsible data management and ethical conduct. Question 8. Quality control measures reveal a critical security vulnerability in the IBM Notes Traveler server software that could potentially expose sensitive user data. The vulnerability has been publicly disclosed, and a patch is available from IBM. However, Applying the patch requires a scheduled downtime of the traveler service, which is heavily utilized by the sales team for mobile access to their customer relationship management data. What is the most appropriate immediate course of action for the IBM Notes Traveler Administrator? Option A. Inform senior management of the vulnerability and await their directive on how to proceed, without performing any initial technical assessment. Option B. Immediately apply the patch to the IBM Notes Traveler server to eliminate the security risk, regardless of the impact on service availability. Option C. Defer applying the patch until a less busy period for the sales team, accepting the risk of potential data exposure in the interim. Option D. Conduct a comprehensive risk assessment to evaluate the potential impact of the vulnerability, the likelihood of exploitation, and the business impact of applying the patch, before scheduling and implementing the fix. The correct answer is D. Conduct a comprehensive risk assessment to evaluate the potential impact of the vulnerability, the likelihood of exploitation, and the business impact of applying the patch, before scheduling and implementing the fix. Explanation. Scenario analysis. The scenario presents a challenge where a critical security vulnerability has been identified in IBM Notes Traveler, impacting a significant portion of the user base. The professional challenge lies in balancing the immediate need for remediation with the potential disruption to business operations, and the need to adhere to established change management and risk assessment protocols. A hasty, uncoordinated response could introduce new risks or violate compliance requirements, while an overly delayed response could expose the organization to significant security threats and potential data breaches. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a structured risk assessment process. This aligns with best practices in IT governance and security management, which are implicitly expected within the context of administering enterprise systems like IBM Notes Traveler. A thorough risk assessment allows for the identification of the vulnerability, evaluation of its potential impact, e.g., data confidentiality, integrity, availability, and the likelihood of exploitation. Based on this assessment, appropriate mitigation strategies can be prioritized and implemented in a controlled manner, minimizing disruption and ensuring compliance with internal policies and potentially external regulatory frameworks. Though specific regulations are not detailed here, the principle of due diligence in security is universal. This approach ensures that decisions are data-driven and that resources are allocated effectively to address the most critical risks first, demonstrating responsible system administration. Incorrect approaches analysis. Implementing a patch immediately without a risk assessment is professionally unacceptable because it bypasses critical evaluation steps. This could lead to unintended consequences, such as system instability, incompatibility with other applications, or the introduction of new, unforeseen vulnerabilities. It fails to demonstrate due diligence in understanding the potential impact of the change on the overall IT environment and business operations. Ignoring the vulnerability due to the perceived complexity of the fix is also professionally unacceptable. This demonstrates a failure to uphold the administrator's responsibility for system security and integrity. It exposes the organization to significant risks of data breaches, compliance violations, and reputational damage, which could have severe financial and legal repercussions. This approach neglects the fundamental duty of care in managing IT systems. Escalating the issue to senior management without any initial assessment is inefficient and unprofessional. While escalation is sometimes necessary, it should be based on a preliminary understanding of the problem and its potential impact. Without an initial risk assessment, the escalation lacks the necessary context and data for informed decision-making by management, potentially leading to misallocation of resources or inappropriate responses. Professional reasoning. Professionals managing enterprise systems like IBM Notes Traveler must adopt a proactive and systematic approach to risk management. When faced with a security vulnerability, the decision-making process should involve 1. Identification, clearly understanding the nature and scope of the vulnerability. 2. Assessment, conducting a thorough risk assessment to determine the potential impact and likelihood of exploitation. This involves considering technical, operational, and business implications. 3. Prioritization, ranking risks based on their severity and potential impact. 4. Mitigation planning, developing and evaluating potential solutions, considering their effectiveness, feasibility, and potential side effects. 5. Implementation, executing the chosen mitigation strategy in a controlled and tested manner, often following established change management procedures. 6. Monitoring, continuously evaluating the effectiveness of the implemented solution and the ongoing security posture. This structured approach ensures that decisions are informed, risks are managed effectively, and organizational resources are utilized efficiently, all while upholding professional responsibilities. Question 9. Governance review demonstrates a significant gap in the documented procedures for handling sensitive corporate data on IBM Notes traveler-enabled mobile devices, leading to inconsistent security practices among administrators. Which of the following approaches best addresses this governance finding and aligns with robust IT administration principles? Option A. Develop and implement a comprehensive policy outlining acceptable use, data encryption standards, access control mechanisms, and data sanitization procedures for sensitive data on mobile devices, coupled with mandatory administrator training. Option B. Immediately disable all access to sensitive corporate data from mobile devices until a new, highly restrictive policy can be drafted and approved. Option C. Rely on the existing, informal understanding among administrators regarding the handling of sensitive data, assuming they are adequately protecting it. Option D. Instruct administrators to exercise their best judgment on a case-by-case basis when dealing with sensitive data on mobile devices, emphasizing user convenience. The correct answer is A. Develop and implement a comprehensive policy outlining acceptable use, data encryption standards, access control mechanisms, and data sanitization procedures for sensitive data on mobile devices, coupled with mandatory administrator training. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in IT administration, where the practical implementation of security policies can conflict with user productivity needs. The core difficulty lies in balancing robust data protection, as mandated by IBM Notes Traveler Administration best practices, and implied regulatory compliance. Though specific regulations are not cited for this exam, the principles of data security and access control are universal in professional IT environments, with the operational requirements of mobile users. A governance review highlighting a lack of clear guidelines for handling sensitive data on mobile devices indicates a potential vulnerability and a failure to adhere to established security postures. The correct approach prioritizes a structured, policy-driven solution that aligns with security best practices and ensures accountability. Establishing a clear, documented policy for handling sensitive data on mobile devices, including encryption requirements, access controls, and data sanitization procedures, is paramount. This approach ensures that all administrators and users understand their responsibilities, minimizes the risk of data breaches, and provides a framework for auditing and compliance. It directly addresses the governance review's findings by creating the missing oversight and control mechanisms. This represents best professional practice because it proactively mitigates risk, ensures consistent application of security measures, and provides a defensible position in case of an incident. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on user convenience without implementing commensurate security controls is professionally unacceptable. This would represent a failure to uphold the organization's data security obligations and could lead to data leakage or unauthorized access, violating fundamental principles of data protection. Another incorrect approach, which involves implementing overly restrictive policies that severely hinder user productivity without a clear business justification or risk assessment, is also professionally flawed. While security is important, it must be balanced with operational needs. Such an approach can lead to workarounds that bypass security altogether, creating new vulnerabilities, and can damage user morale and productivity. A third incorrect approach, which is to ignore the governance review findings and maintain the status quo, is the most egregious failure. This demonstrates a disregard for established governance processes, a lack of commitment to security, and an abdication of responsibility, leaving the organization exposed to significant risks. A professional decision-making process in such situations should involve a thorough risk assessment, consultation with stakeholders, including IT security, legal, and business units, and the development of a balanced policy that addresses both security and operational requirements. This process should be iterative, with regular reviews and updates to ensure continued effectiveness and alignment with evolving threats and business needs. Question 10. Implementation of a new IBM Notes traveler security policy requiring multi-factor authentication for all mobile device access is being considered, which approach best balances security requirements with user productivity and operational continuity. Option A. Deploying multi-factor authentication solely based on technical feasibility, without consulting end users or assessing the potential impact on their daily workflows and productivity. Option B. A phased rollout of the multi-factor authentication policy, accompanied by comprehensive user training, clear communication of the policy's benefits, and a dedicated support channel for user inquiries and technical assistance. Option C. Immediate enforcement of the multi-factor authentication policy across all users, with minimal prior notification and no dedicated support resources to ensure rapid security enhancement. Option D. Implementing multi-factor authentication only for users who have reported lost or stolen devices, creating an ad hoc security measure based on incident response. The correct answer is B. A phased rollout of the multi-factor authentication policy, accompanied by comprehensive user training, clear communication of the policy's benefits, and a dedicated support channel for user inquiries and technical assistance. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in IT administration, balancing the need for robust security with the operational demands of user productivity. IBM notes traveler administration, particularly concerning mobile device management and data synchronization, requires a nuanced approach to policy enforcement. The professional challenge lies in identifying and implementing security measures that are effective without unduly hindering user access to critical business information, which can lead to workarounds that bypass security altogether. The correct approach emphasizes a phased rollout and comprehensive user education. This aligns with best practices in change management and security policy implementation. By providing clear communication, training, and support, administrators can ensure users understand the rationale behind the policies and how to comply. This proactive approach minimizes disruption and fosters user buy-in, which is crucial for long-term policy adherence. Furthermore, it allows for iterative refinement of policies based on real-world feedback and observed usage patterns, ensuring that security controls are both effective and practical. This aligns with the principle of least privilege and defense in depth, ensuring that security is integrated rather than afterthought. An incorrect approach that immediately enforces stringent, undocumented policies without user consultation or training is professionally unacceptable. This can lead to significant user frustration, decreased productivity, and potential security breaches as users attempt to circumvent the new restrictions. Such an approach fails to consider the human element of IT security and can be perceived as overly authoritarian, undermining trust between IT and the user base. It also risks noncompliance due to lack of understanding, which is a significant ethical and operational failure. Another incorrect approach, focusing solely on technical enforcement without considering the business impact or user experience, is also flawed. While technically sound, it may overlook critical business workflows that rely on specific device functionalities or data access patterns. This can lead to operational paralysis and a perception that it is out of touch with business needs. A third incorrect approach, relying on ad hoc security measures that are not part of a documented, consistent policy, creates an environment of uncertainty and potential vulnerability. This lack of standardization makes it difficult to audit, manage, and troubleshoot security issues effectively. It also fails to provide a clear framework for user behavior, increasing the risk of accidental noncompliance. The professional decision-making process should involve a thorough risk assessment, stakeholder consultation, including end users and management, a phased implementation plan with clear communication and training, and ongoing monitoring and refinement of policies. This iterative and collaborative approach ensures that security objectives are met while maintaining operational efficiency and user satisfaction. Question 11. The audit findings indicate that the process for revoking IBM notes traveler access for former employees is inconsistent, with some devices remaining registered for extended periods after the employee's departure, while others are deregistered prematurely, impacting handover procedures. Which of the following administrative approaches best addresses these audit findings while adhering to best practices for data security and operational continuity? Option A. Deregister devices only when a specific user complaint or security alert is received, allowing a significant backlog of deregistration requests to accumulate. Option B. Automatically deregister all devices associated with an employee's account immediately upon their termination date being entered into the HR system, without prior notification to the employee. Option C. Implement a documented, multi-step deregistration process that includes user notification of impending deregistration, a brief grace period for data retrieval or handover, and a final confirmation of deregistration, coupled with regular audits of registered devices against employee status. Option D. Rely solely on the IBM Notes Traveler Server's default inactivity timeout settings to deregister devices, without any proactive administrative intervention or user communication. The correct answer is C. Implement a documented, multi-step deregistration process that includes user notification of impending deregistration, a brief grace period for data retrieval or handover, and a final confirmation of deregistration, coupled with regular audits of registered devices against employee status. Explanation: the audit findings indicate a potential gap in the administration of IBM Notes Traveler, specifically concerning the handling of device registration and deregistration processes. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing user convenience and productivity with the organization's security posture and compliance obligations. Inaccurate or incomplete deregistration can lead to unauthorized access to corporate data if a device is lost, stolen, or no longer in the possession of the authorized user. Conversely, overly aggressive or poorly managed deregistration can disrupt user access and impact business operations. The correct approach, which involves a documented, multi-step process for device deregistration that includes user notification and verification, represents best professional practice. This aligns with general IT security best practices and the principles of data governance, which emphasize minimizing data exposure and maintaining an accurate inventory of access points. By ensuring that deregistration is a deliberate and confirmed action, the organization reduces the risk of data breaches stemming from forgotten or compromised devices. This proactive stance is crucial for maintaining the integrity of sensitive corporate information accessible via mobile devices. An incorrect approach that relies solely on automatic deregistration after a period of inactivity, without user confirmation or notification, presents significant regulatory and ethical failures. This method fails to account for legitimate reasons for temporary inactivity, e.g., user on extended leave, and could inadvertently revoke access for authorized users, leading to operational disruptions. More critically, it increases the risk of data exposure if a device is lost or stolen, and the user is unaware of the deregistration, as the device might still retain access to corporate data until the automatic process is triggered, or if the inactivity period is too long. Another incorrect approach, which involves immediate deregistration upon a user's departure without a grace period or confirmation, also poses regulatory and ethical issues. This can lead to immediate disruption for the departing employee if their access is required for handover processes or if there's a delay in their final data retrieval. Ethically, it can be perceived as abrupt and unsupportive. From a security perspective, if not managed meticulously, it could leave a window where the device is still technically connected before full deprovisioning, creating a potential, albeit short-lived, security vulnerability. A third incorrect approach, which is to ignore deregistration requests until a significant backlog accumulates, is a clear failure in both operational efficiency and security. This backlog represents a direct security risk, as devices that should no longer have access may still be connected to the corporate network. It also demonstrates a lack of responsiveness to user needs and a disregard for security protocols, potentially violating internal policies and external compliance requirements related to data access control and timely revocation of privileges. The professional reasoning process for handling such situations should involve a risk-based assessment. Administrators must understand the potential impact of both over- and under-provisioning of access. This includes consulting organizational policies on data security, device management, and employee offboarding. Implementing a clear, documented procedure that prioritizes security while minimizing operational disruption is paramount. Regular review and auditing of deregistration processes are essential to ensure ongoing compliance and effectiveness. Question 12. Market research demonstrates that organizations are increasingly adopting mobile solutions to enhance employee productivity, but are often challenged by the complexities of ensuring data security and regulatory compliance in a mobile environment. For an IBM Notes Traveler Administration team operating within a jurisdiction with strict data privacy laws, what is the most critical initial step when planning the deployment of IBM Notes Traveler to ensure adherence to these regulations? Option A. Conduct a thorough review of all applicable data privacy laws and regulations relevant to the organization's industry and jurisdiction, and map these requirements to IBM Notes Traveler's security and management features. Option B. Prioritize the deployment of the latest version of IBM Notes Traveler and its associated client applications to leverage all available security patches and new features. Option C. Implement a broad policy allowing all employees to access corporate email and calendar data from any personal mobile device to maximize convenience and productivity. Option D. Focus solely on enabling the fastest possible synchronization speeds for all mobile devices to ensure users have immediate access to the latest information. The correct answer is A. Conduct a thorough review of all applicable data privacy laws and regulations relevant to the organization's industry and jurisdiction, and map these requirements to IBM Notes Traveler's security and management features. Explanation. Scenario analysis. Implementing IBM Notes Traveler in a regulated environment presents a significant challenge due to the inherent need to balance user productivity with stringent data security and privacy requirements. Organizations operating under specific regulatory frameworks, such as those governing financial services or healthcare, must ensure that mobile access to sensitive corporate data complies with all applicable laws and guidelines. The complexity arises from the distributed nature of mobile devices, the potential for data loss or unauthorized access, and the need for robust auditing and reporting capabilities. A misstep in implementation can lead to severe regulatory penalties, reputational damage, and loss of customer trust. Therefore, a thorough understanding of the regulatory landscape and its implications for mobile device management is paramount. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a comprehensive strategy that prioritizes data security and regulatory compliance from the outset. This includes implementing strong authentication mechanisms, robust encryption for data at rest and in transit, and granular access controls tailored to user roles and data sensitivity. Furthermore, it necessitates establishing clear policies for device usage, data handling, and incident response, all of which must be aligned with the specific regulatory requirements of the jurisdiction. Regular audits, logging, and reporting are crucial to demonstrate compliance and to identify any potential security breaches or policy violations. This proactive and layered security model ensures that IBM Notes Traveler is deployed in a manner that not only enhances productivity, but also safeguards sensitive information and meets all legal obligations. Incorrect approaches analysis. Deploying IBM Notes Traveler without a clear understanding of the specific regulatory framework governing the organization's operations is a critical failure. For instance, neglecting to implement data encryption for sensitive information stored on mobile devices would violate regulations that mandate data protection, leading to potential fines and legal repercussions. Similarly, failing to establish audit trails for device access and data synchronization would hinder the ability to investigate security incidents or demonstrate compliance to regulatory bodies, which is often a non-negotiable requirement. Implementing overly permissive access controls that grant users access to data they do not require for their job functions increases the risk of data leakage and unauthorized disclosure, directly contravening principles of data minimization and least privilege, which are fundamental to most data protection regulations. Professional reasoning. Professionals tasked with implementing IBM Notes Traveler in a regulated environment must adopt a risk-based approach. This involves first identifying all relevant regulatory obligations and then designing the Traveler deployment to meet those requirements. A key step is to conduct a thorough risk assessment to understand potential vulnerabilities and threats specific to mobile access of corporate data. Based on this assessment, security controls and policies should be implemented. Continuous monitoring, regular security reviews, and staying abreast of evolving regulatory landscapes are essential for maintaining compliance and mitigating risks. Collaboration with legal, compliance, and security teams is crucial throughout the entire life cycle of the deployment. Question 13. Strategic planning requires a thorough assessment of how to securely integrate IBM Notes Traveler for mobile access to sensitive corporate data within a highly regulated industry, ensuring compliance with all applicable data protection and privacy mandates. Which of the following implementation strategies best addresses these critical requirements? Option A. Prioritizing rapid deployment and broad user access to IBM Notes Traveler, with a plan to address security and compliance concerns through post-implementation audits and user training. Option B. Configuring IBM Notes Traveler with minimal security controls to ensure maximum compatibility with older mobile devices and to avoid user complaints about access restrictions. Option C. Deploying IBM Notes Traveler with default security settings and relying on individual users to enable their devices' built-in security features and report any security incidents. Option D. Implementing robust device-level encryption, multi-factor authentication for all access, and granular access control policies directly within the IBM Notes Traveler server configuration, alongside a clear remote wipe policy for lost or compromised devices. The correct answer is D. Implementing robust device-level encryption, multi-factor authentication for all access, and granular access control policies directly within the IBM Notes Traveler server configuration, alongside a clear remote wipe policy for lost or compromised devices. Explanation. Scenario analysis. Implementing IBM Notes Traveler in a regulated environment presents a significant challenge due to the inherent need for data security, privacy, and compliance with specific industry regulations. The core difficulty lies in balancing the convenience and productivity benefits of mobile access with the stringent requirements for data protection, auditability, and access control. Administrators must ensure that sensitive corporate data, when accessed on mobile devices, remains protected against unauthorized access, data leakage, and potential breaches, all while maintaining operational efficiency and user experience. This requires a proactive and meticulous approach to configuration, policy enforcement, and ongoing monitoring. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a comprehensive strategy that prioritizes robust security controls and adherence to regulatory mandates from the outset. This includes implementing strong authentication mechanisms, device-level encryption, remote wipe capabilities, and granular access policies that align with the organization's data classification and compliance framework. By integrating these security measures directly into the Traveler deployment and ongoing management, administrators ensure that the solution not only meets functional requirements, but also satisfies the strict regulatory obligations for data handling and privacy. This proactive stance minimizes risk and demonstrates due diligence in protecting sensitive information, which is paramount in a regulated industry. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach is to defer security and compliance considerations until after the initial deployment. This reactive stance creates significant vulnerabilities. It risks noncompliance with regulations that mandate specific security controls from the point of data creation or access. For example, failing to implement device encryption from the start could lead to a breach of data privacy regulations if a device is lost or stolen. Another incorrect approach is to rely solely on end-user device security without enforcing organizational policies through Traveler. This is problematic because it outsources critical security responsibilities to individuals who may not fully understand or prioritize compliance, leading to potential policy violations and data exposure that the organization remains liable for. A third incorrect approach is to implement overly restrictive policies that hinder legitimate business operations. While security is crucial, policies that are excessively burdensome can lead to workarounds that bypass intended security controls, ultimately undermining the overall security posture and creating compliance gaps. Professional reasoning. Professionals must adopt a risk-based approach, thoroughly understanding the specific regulatory landscape applicable to their organization. This involves a detailed assessment of data sensitivity, potential threats, and compliance requirements. The decision-making process should prioritize security and compliance by design, integrating these considerations into every stage of the implementation and management lifecycle. Regular audits, policy reviews, and continuous monitoring are essential to adapt to evolving threats and regulatory changes. A collaborative approach involving IT security, legal, and compliance departments ensures that all aspects of the deployment are adequately addressed. Question 14. Investigation of an IBM Notes Traveler implementation strategy for a large enterprise reveals a need to balance robust mobile security with user accessibility across a wide range of devices and operating systems. Which approach best mitigates risks and ensures a successful, compliant deployment? Option A. Immediately deploy the most stringent security policies across all devices to ensure maximum protection from day one. Option B. Prioritize user convenience by disabling most security features to ensure easy access for all employees. Option C. Conduct a phased rollout, starting with a pilot group of diverse devices and users to test and refine configurations before a full deployment. Option D. Rely solely on the default security settings provided by IBM Notes Traveler, assuming they are sufficient for all organizational needs. The correct answer is A. Immediately deploy the most stringent security policies across all devices to ensure maximum protection from day one. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common implementation challenge in IBM Notes Traveler administration, ensuring secure and compliant mobile device access while managing a diverse user base with varying device types and operating system versions. The challenge lies in balancing the need for robust security controls with user experience and operational feasibility. Administrators must navigate potential conflicts between security policies, device capabilities, and user expectations, all within the framework of IBM's recommended best practices and any applicable organizational policies. The complexity arises from the dynamic nature of mobile devices, the constant evolution of operating systems, and the potential for misconfigurations that could lead to security vulnerabilities or service disruptions. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a phased rollout strategy, beginning with a pilot group of users and devices that represent the typical deployment. This allows for thorough testing of security policies, device compatibility, and user acceptance in a controlled environment. By gathering feedback from the pilot group and monitoring system performance, administrators can identify and resolve any issues before a broader deployment. This iterative process, informed by real-world usage, is crucial for minimizing risks, ensuring a smooth transition, and adhering to best practices for secure and efficient IBM Notes Traveler implementation. This aligns with a principle of prudent system deployment, where thorough validation precedes widespread adoption, thereby mitigating potential security and operational risks. Incorrect approaches analysis. A big bang deployment without prior testing or a pilot phase is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. It demonstrates a lack of due diligence in assessing potential security vulnerabilities and operational impacts. This approach increases the risk of widespread security breaches, data exposure, and service outages, which could have severe consequences for the organization and its users, potentially violating data protection regulations and organizational security policies. Implementing overly restrictive security policies that are not aligned with the capabilities of common user devices or that lack clear communication to users is also professionally unacceptable. This can lead to user frustration, workarounds that bypass security, and ultimately, a less secure environment. It fails to consider the practical implications of policy enforcement and can be seen as a failure to adequately support users while maintaining security. Ignoring device diversity and attempting to apply a single, uniform security configuration across all devices, regardless of their operating system or capabilities, is another flawed approach. This can lead to either inadequate security on some devices or an inability for other devices to connect, impacting productivity and potentially creating security gaps. It demonstrates a lack of understanding of the technical landscape and a failure to implement a tailored, effective security strategy. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach IBM Notes Traveler implementation with a structured, risk-based methodology. This involves 1. Understanding the organizational security requirements and any relevant regulatory mandates. 2. Assessing the current IT infrastructure and the diversity of user devices. 3. Developing a comprehensive deployment plan that includes a pilot phase. 4. Defining clear, implementable security policies that are communicated effectively to users. 5. Establishing robust monitoring and support mechanisms. 6. Iteratively refining the deployment based on feedback and performance data. This systematic approach ensures that security is maintained, user needs are met, and operational stability is achieved, reflecting professional responsibility and best practice in IT administration. Question 15. What factors determine the ethical and regulatory permissibility of an IBM Notes traveler administrator accessing an employee's device data to diagnose a recurring connectivity issue, when the employee has not explicitly consented to such access for this specific instance? Option A. The administrator's personal belief that the issue is purely technical and unlikely to involve sensitive personal information, and the urgency of resolving the connectivity problem to maintain business operations. Option B. The administrator's understanding of the organization's data privacy policy, the specific nature of the data being accessed, and the existence of a documented security or operational justification that aligns with regulatory requirements for data access. Option C. The administrator's desire to proactively identify potential security vulnerabilities by reviewing all available data on the employee's device, regardless of the reported issue. Option D. The administrator's assumption that by using a company-provided device and service, employees implicitly consent to any level of data access by IT personnel for troubleshooting purposes. Correct answer is B. The administrator's understanding of the organization's data privacy policy, the specific nature of the data being accessed, and the existence of a documented security or operational justification that aligns with regulatory requirements for data access. Explanation. This scenario presents an ethical dilemma for an IBM Notes traveler administrator regarding data privacy and compliance within a regulated industry. The challenge lies in balancing the organization's need for operational efficiency and security monitoring with the individual privacy rights of employees, particularly when sensitive personal data might be accessed. The administrator must navigate potential conflicts between internal policies, industry regulations, and employee expectations. The correct approach prioritizes transparency, consent, and adherence to established data protection policies and relevant regulations by clearly communicating the purpose of data access, obtaining necessary approvals, and ensuring that access is limited to what is strictly required for troubleshooting or security investigations. The administrator upholds both ethical standards and legal obligations. This approach minimizes the risk of privacy breaches, maintains employee trust, and ensures compliance with data privacy laws, which typically mandate that personal data should only be accessed for legitimate, specified purposes and with appropriate safeguards. An incorrect approach would involve accessing employee data without clear justification or proper authorization. This could stem from a desire to get to the bottom of an issue quickly, without following established protocols. Such actions would violate principles of data minimization and purpose limitation, which are cornerstones of data protection regulations. Employees have a reasonable expectation of privacy regarding their personal communications and device usage. Unauthorized access erodes this trust and can lead to significant legal repercussions, including fines and reputational damage for the organization. Furthermore, it demonstrates a disregard for the ethical responsibility to protect sensitive information. Another incorrect approach would be to ignore the potential for sensitive data within traveler data, assuming it's all technical in nature. This oversight fails to acknowledge the reality that employee communication platforms often contain personal information. A failure to consider this possibility and implement appropriate safeguards is a form of negligence that can lead to unintentional data breaches and noncompliance with privacy laws. The professional decision-making process in such situations should involve a clear understanding of the organization's data privacy policies, the applicable regulatory framework, e.g., GDPR if applicable to the jurisdiction or specific industry regulations, and the principles of data protection. When faced with a situation requiring access to employee data, the administrator should 1. Identify the specific business or security need. 2. Consult the organization's data privacy policy and relevant legal counsel or compliance officer. 3. Determine if less intrusive methods can achieve the objective. 4. If access is necessary, ensure it is authorized, documented, and limited to the minimum data required. 5. Communicate transparently with the affected employee, where appropriate and feasible. Question 16. When evaluating a user's request to bypass the mandatory strong password policy for their IBM Notes traveler device due to perceived inconvenience, what is the most professionally responsible course of action for an IBM Notes traveler administrator? Option A. Grant the exception to the user's request, prioritizing user convenience and avoiding potential friction while noting the request internally. Option B. Enforce the strong password policy, explaining its importance for data security and corporate compliance, and offer assistance in setting up a strong password. Option C. Ignore the request and continue with daily tasks, assuming the user will eventually comply with the policy on their own. Option D. Advise the user to disable all security features on their device to simplify access, as long as they promise to be careful. The correct answer is B. Enforce the strong password policy, explaining its importance for data security and corporate compliance, and offer assistance in setting up a strong password. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the potential conflict between an individual's personal convenience and the organization's established security policies and data privacy obligations. The administrator is entrusted with maintaining the integrity and security of sensitive corporate data accessed via IBM Notes Traveler. The temptation to bypass a security protocol for personal ease, especially when it appears to have no immediate negative impact, can lead to significant ethical and regulatory breaches. The correct approach involves prioritizing adherence to the IBM Notes Traveler administration policies and the underlying regulatory framework governing data security and privacy. This means ensuring all devices accessing corporate data meet the defined security standards, including the use of strong passwords or biometric authentication. This approach upholds the organization's responsibility to protect sensitive information from unauthorized access, which is a fundamental requirement under data protection regulations. By enforcing the policy, the administrator acts as a responsible custodian of corporate data, mitigating risks of data breaches and ensuring compliance. An incorrect approach would be to grant an exception to the policy without proper authorization or a documented risk assessment. This could involve allowing a device with a weak password to connect to IBM Notes Traveler. This action directly violates the principle of least privilege and undermines the security posture established by the organization. Such a lapse could lead to unauthorized access if the device is lost or stolen, resulting in a data breach. This failure to enforce security policies exposes the organization to regulatory penalties, reputational damage, and potential legal liabilities, especially under data privacy laws that mandate reasonable security measures. Another incorrect approach would be to ignore the policy violation altogether, assuming it is a minor issue. This passive stance is equally detrimental. It signals a disregard for established security protocols and can embolden other users to circumvent policies, creating a culture of noncompliance. This inaction fails to address the immediate security risk and contributes to a systemic weakness in data protection. The professional reasoning process in such situations should involve a clear understanding of the organization's security policy, the relevant regulatory requirements, e.g., data protection laws applicable in the relevant jurisdiction, and the potential consequences of noncompliance. When faced with a policy violation, the administrator should first attempt to educate the user about the policy and its importance. If the user is unable or unwilling to comply, the administrator must escalate the issue to their supervisor or the designated security officer for a decision, rather than making an ad hoc exception. This ensures that any deviation from policy is authorized, documented, and based on a thorough risk assessment, thereby maintaining accountability and upholding professional standards. Question 17. The control framework reveals that a senior executive, who is known to be impatient with standard IT procedures, has requested immediate access to a confidential client report via their Notes Traveler device, bypassing the usual multi-factor authentication process for accessing such sensitive documents. The executive states it is urgent for an upcoming meeting. As the IBM Notes Traveler administrator, what is the most appropriate course of action? Option A. Politely explain that while the urgency is understood, access to confidential reports requires adherence to the established security protocols, including multi-factor authentication, and offer to guide them through the process or escalate the request to their manager for expedited approval if necessary. Option B. Forward the request to the IT security team for an immediate review and potential temporary override of the authentication policy without directly engaging the executive further. Option C. Inform the executive that their request cannot be fulfilled due to the bypass of standard security procedures and advise them to wait until they can access the report through the approved, secure channels. Option D. Grant immediate access to the report via Notes Traveler to satisfy the executive's urgent request, assuming their seniority implies authorization. The correct answer is A. Politely explain that while the urgency is understood, access to confidential reports requires adherence to the established security protocols, including multi-factor authentication, and offer to guide them through the process or escalate the request to their manager for expedited approval if necessary. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it involves a conflict between a user's perceived need for immediate access to sensitive information and the administrator's responsibility to maintain data security and compliance with IBM Notes Traveler Administration policies. The administrator must balance user convenience with the imperative to protect confidential data from unauthorized access, especially when the request is made outside of standard procedures and potentially bypasses established security protocols. The pressure to resolve the issue quickly, coupled with the user's seniority, adds to the complexity. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach prioritizes adherence to established security policies and procedures, which are designed to protect sensitive data and ensure compliance with regulatory frameworks relevant to IBM Notes Traveler administration. This involves verifying the user's identity and authorization through official channels, documenting the request, and escalating it to the appropriate personnel if it falls outside the administrator's purview or standard operating procedures. This method upholds the principle of least privilege and ensures that any exceptions are handled with proper oversight and accountability, thereby mitigating security risks and maintaining audit trails. This aligns with best practices in data governance and security administration, which are implicitly governed by the principles of responsible IT management, expected within the scope of IBM Notes Traveler administration. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves granting immediate access without proper verification. This directly violates security best practices by bypassing established authorization protocols. It creates a significant security vulnerability, potentially exposing sensitive data to unauthorized individuals and leaving an audit trail that indicates a lapse in security controls. This could lead to regulatory noncompliance if data protection laws are breached. Another incorrect approach is to ignore the request due to its informal nature. While informal requests can be problematic, outright ignoring them can lead to user dissatisfaction and potential workarounds that are even less secure. Ethically, administrators have a responsibility to address user needs within the bounds of security and policy. Failing to do so can foster an environment where users seek unauthorized solutions. A third incorrect approach is to grant access based solely on the user's seniority. Seniority does not automatically confer authorization for accessing all types of data. This approach undermines the principle of role-based access control and can lead to data breaches if senior personnel are not authorized for the specific information requested. It also sets a dangerous precedent for future requests. Professional reasoning. Professionals should employ a decision-making process that begins with understanding the request and its context. They must then consult relevant policies, procedures, and security guidelines. If the request aligns with these, it can be fulfilled. If it deviates, the professional must assess the risk and determine the appropriate course of action, which may involve seeking clarification, escalating the request, or denying it with a clear explanation. Documentation and communication are crucial throughout this process to ensure transparency and accountability. Question 18. The efficiency study reveals that analyzing individual user device data, such as application usage patterns and data synchronization logs within IBM Notes Traveler, could significantly optimize server resource allocation and identify potential performance bottlenecks. As the IBM Notes Traveler administrator, you are tasked with implementing the recommendations. However, the study does not explicitly detail how user consent for this level of data analysis was obtained, or if it aligns with current organizational data privacy policies. What is the most appropriate course of action? Option A. Implement a generalized data collection strategy that aggregates anonymized data, but avoid analyzing individual user device data to minimize privacy risks, even if it means sacrificing some of the study's optimization potential. Option B. Proceed with implementing the data analysis as recommended by the efficiency study, assuming that the benefits of optimization outweigh potential privacy concerns, and address any policy gaps later. Option C. Inform users that their device data will be analyzed for efficiency purposes and proceed with the analysis, relying on their continued use of the service as implicit consent. Option D. Halt the implementation of the data analysis and consult with the legal and compliance departments to ensure that any data collection and analysis strictly adheres to organizational data privacy policies and relevant regulations, seeking explicit user consent if required. Correct answer is B. Proceed with implementing the data analysis as recommended by the efficiency study, assuming that the benefits of optimization outweigh potential privacy concerns, and address any policy gaps later. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a classic ethical dilemma where the pursuit of efficiency clashes with the principle of data privacy and user consent, particularly within the context of IBM Notes Traveler administration. The challenge lies in balancing the organization's desire for operational insights with the individual user's right to control their data and the potential for misuse or unintended consequences of data access. The administrator must navigate this by adhering strictly to established policies and legal frameworks governing data handling. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves prioritizing user consent and adhering to established data privacy policies. This aligns with the principles of data protection regulations, which generally require explicit consent for data collection and usage beyond what is strictly necessary for service provision. In the context of IBM Notes Traveler, this means ensuring that any data collection for efficiency studies is anonymized, aggregated, and explicitly covered by user agreements or organizational policies that users have acknowledged. This upholds user trust and complies with the spirit and letter of data privacy laws, preventing unauthorized access or profiling. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves directly accessing individual user device data without explicit consent or a clear policy justification. This violates data privacy principles and potentially breaches regulations that mandate user consent for data access and processing. It can lead to a loss of user trust, legal repercussions, and reputational damage for the organization. Another incorrect approach is to proceed with the data collection based solely on the efficiency study's recommendation, without verifying if existing policies adequately cover this type of data usage. This demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a disregard for the established governance framework. It assumes that efficiency gains automatically justify data access, which is a flawed ethical and regulatory stance. A third incorrect approach is to implement data collection methods that are overly broad or intrusive, even if some form of consent was obtained. This could involve collecting more data than is necessary for the stated purpose, or collecting sensitive information that is not relevant to the efficiency study. Such actions can be seen as a circumvention of the intent of privacy regulations and can still lead to ethical concerns and potential legal challenges. Professional reasoning. Professionals in this role should always begin by consulting and strictly adhering to the organization's established data privacy policies and any relevant legal or regulatory frameworks. When faced with a new initiative like an efficiency study that might involve user data, the first step is to assess its alignment with existing policies. If policies are unclear or insufficient, the administrator must seek clarification, and if necessary, advocate for policy updates that incorporate user consent mechanisms and define the scope of data collection. Transparency with users about data collection practices, even for efficiency purposes, is paramount. A robust decision-making process involves risk assessment, policy review, legal consultation, and prioritizing user privacy and consent above all else when there is ambiguity or potential for conflict. Question 19. The monitoring system demonstrates an unusual pattern of data egress from a user's IBM Notes Traveler device, potentially indicating a policy violation. As the administrator, you have access to logs detailing the type and volume of data transferred, but not the content of the data itself. What is the most appropriate course of action? Option A. Immediately suspend the user's access to IBM Notes Traveler and escalate the incident to human resources and legal departments for further investigation, without conducting an initial review of the logs against company policy. Option B. Review the device's access logs and the user's recent activity within the Notes Traveler environment, strictly adhering to the company's acceptable use policy and any explicit consent provided by the employee regarding device monitoring, to determine if the observed pattern constitutes a policy violation. Option C. Ignore the alert as the monitoring system does not provide content visibility, assuming the data transfer is benign and not a security risk. Option D. Access the content of the user's emails and calendar entries on the device to ascertain the nature of the data being transferred, even if the monitoring system does not provide content visibility. The correct answer is B. Review the device's access logs and the user's recent activity within the Notes Traveler environment, strictly adhering to the company's acceptable use policy and any explicit consent provided by the employee regarding device monitoring, to determine if the observed pattern constitutes a policy violation. Explanation. This scenario presents an ethical dilemma for an IBM Notes Traveler administrator concerning user privacy versus security monitoring. The challenge lies in balancing the organization's legitimate need to protect its data and systems from misuse with the individual employee's expectation of privacy regarding their personal communications on a device that also accesses corporate resources. The administrator must navigate this without violating any applicable regulations or company policies, which in the context of C2040-412 IBM Notes Traveler Administration would typically fall under general data protection principles and corporate IT usage policies, assuming a U.S. jurisdiction for this exam. The correct approach involves adhering strictly to the organization's established acceptable use policy (OAP) and any explicit consent obtained from employees regarding device monitoring. If the AUP clearly outlines the scope and nature of monitoring, and employees have agreed to it, then investigating the flagged activity within those defined parameters is professionally sound. This approach upholds transparency and contractual agreement, ensuring that actions taken are justifiable and compliant with both internal policy and, by extension, general data privacy expectations. It prioritizes a documented and agreed-upon framework for monitoring, minimizing the risk of overreach. An incorrect approach would be to conduct broad, unfettered access to the user's device or communications beyond what is specified in the AUP or consent. For instance, accessing personal emails or browsing history unrelated to the suspected policy violation would be a significant ethical and potentially legal breach. This constitutes an overreach of authority and a violation of privacy expectations, even on a corporate-issued or corporate-accessed device. Another incorrect approach would be to ignore the alert entirely without any investigation, which could expose the organization to security risks or compliance failures if the alert indicates a genuine threat or policy breach. This demonstrates a lack of due diligence and responsibility. A third incorrect approach would be to immediately escalate the issue to HR or legal without first attempting to understand the nature of the alert within the established monitoring policy, potentially causing unnecessary alarm and procedural complications. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with understanding the organization's policies and legal obligations. When an alert arises, the first step is to consult the AUP and any relevant privacy statements. The administrator should then assess the alert against these documented guidelines to determine if the observed activity falls within the scope of permissible monitoring. If it does, a targeted investigation, strictly limited to the suspected policy violation, is warranted. If the activity falls outside the AUP or raises privacy concerns not covered by policy, the administrator should consult with legal or HR departments before proceeding. This structured approach ensures that actions are always grounded in policy, legality, and ethical considerations. Question 20. Benchmark analysis indicates that a senior executive has requested immediate access to sensitive corporate data via their personal mobile device using IBM Notes Traveler, but their device does not meet the current security compliance standards for mobile access. The executive insists on bypassing the standard compliance checks due to an urgent business need. As the IBM Notes Traveler administrator, what is the most appropriate course of action? Option A. Implement a quick, undocumented workaround to enable access, assuring the executive that it will be addressed later. Option B. Advise the executive to contact their direct IT support team to find a solution without involving the broader security or compliance departments. Option C. Grant the executive immediate access by temporarily disabling the non-compliant device security checks to meet their urgent request. Option D. Escalate the request through the established change management and security review processes for a formal assessment and potential temporary exception. The correct answer is D. Escalate the request through the established change management and security review processes for a formal assessment and potential temporary exception. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge where an IBM Notes Traveler administrator is asked to bypass standard security protocols for a specific user due to a perceived urgent business need. The challenge lies in balancing the immediate operational demands of a key executive with the organization's established security policies and the potential risks associated with granting unauthorized access or bypassing security measures. The administrator must navigate the pressure from a senior stakeholder while upholding their professional responsibility to maintain system integrity and data security. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves escalating the request through the established change management and security review processes. This upholds best professional practice by adhering to the organization's documented security policies and procedures, which are designed to protect sensitive data and maintain system stability. By following these protocols, the administrator ensures that any deviation from standard security is properly assessed, approved, and documented, mitigating potential risks and demonstrating accountability. This aligns with the principles of responsible IT administration, emphasizing security, compliance, and due diligence. Incorrect approaches analysis. Granting the request immediately without proper authorization or documentation would be a significant ethical and regulatory failure. This bypasses established security controls, creating a vulnerability that could be exploited, leading to data breaches or unauthorized access. It undermines the integrity of the security framework and sets a dangerous precedent for future requests. Implementing a temporary workaround that circumvents the intended security mechanisms, even with the executive's verbal consent, is also professionally unacceptable. While seemingly a compromise, it still introduces unmanaged risks and deviates from approved security configurations. This approach lacks the necessary oversight and documentation, making it difficult to track, audit, and revert, and it still violates the spirit and letter of the security policy. Consulting with the executive's direct IT support team without involving the security or compliance departments is insufficient. While collaboration is important, the decision to alter security protocol requires a broader assessment by those responsible for overall system security and compliance, not just the immediate support function. This approach risks overlooking critical security implications that might be apparent to specialized teams. Professional reasoning. Professionals should employ a structured decision-making process that prioritizes adherence to established policies and procedures. When faced with urgent requests that deviate from standard protocols, the first step is to understand the request and its implications. Next, consult the relevant organizational policies and guidelines. If the request falls outside these parameters, the professional should clearly communicate the policy requirements and the potential risks of noncompliance. The appropriate course of action is to escalate the request through the designated channels for review and approval, ensuring that all actions are documented and authorized. This systematic approach ensures that decisions are made with a comprehensive understanding of risks, compliance requirements, and organizational best practices.